Let's I have to share the screen. Let's share the screen. There we go. Okay, welcome. So today we are jumping to the end of the Mishneh Torah. All right, the last two chapters. All right, we're studying Hilchot Yesodei Torah. Was the first chapters of the Mishneh Torah, Maimonides' 1,000 chapter book on Jewish law. And today we're jumping all the way to the end, chapter 998 and 999. 999 and 1000. All right? Hilchot Melachim u'Milchamot, laws of kings and their wars. And the last two chapters discuss the Moshiach, Melech HaMashiach. So it says, HaMelech HaMashiach. First of all, what is the job of the Moshiach? It says, HaMelech HaMashiach, Atid la'amod, ולהחזיר מלכות בית דוד ליושנה הממשלה הראשונה. All right, so in the future, the Mashiach will come, this king, this Messianic king will come, he will stand before us, and he is going to restore the kingdom of the house of David. Uvone Mikdash, and he will build a temple. Umkabes Nidhei Israel, and he will also gather all the diaspora, all of the Jewish people from all over the world. וחוזרים כל המשפטים בימיו כשהיו מקודם, and all the laws as they were given to us and practiced in the past will be restored and practiced again. Makrivin korbanot, right? We are going to renew the worship of the korbanot, bringing the korbanot. Ve'osin shemitin ve'yovelot. And we will also go back to practicing the Shemitah and the Yovel. The Shemitah is every 7th year, right? The land needs its rest. There's no agricultural work. But that's just part of it. Really, it's the Yovel. The Yovel is every 7 Shemitot. The 7th one, there's an extra year. The 50th year is also a Shemitah. And it's called a Yovel. And on this year, slaves go home. They're freed. Anyone who lost property, who lost their land, or had to sell it, now gets restored to them. And it's like a reset button. A reset button is hit on the whole national economy. It's actually a very, very interesting topic. Maybe we'll have a class on the Shemitah and Yovel, which is the foundation really for the Jewish Torah economic system. All right, so Makrivin Korbanot, all the laws that haven't been practiced in a long time will be reinstituted and practiced again. Bringing the sacrifice, keeping the Shemitah and the Yovel, kechol misvatan ha'amura b'Torah, right? As they are commanded to us in the Torah. V'chol mi she'eno ma'amin bo, o mi she'eno mechake lebi'ato, and anybody who does not believe in the Mashiach, that this is going to one day happen, and is not waiting for him to come, lo bish'ar nevi'im bilvad u'kofer, ela b'Torah u'v'Moshe Rabbeinu. Says not only is he denying the words of the prophets, right, but also the Torah and Moshe Rabbeinu, because they all promised this Mashiach at the end of days. שהרי התורה העידה עליו, שנאמר, ושב אדוני אלוהיך את שבותך וריחמך. Right, the Torah already gave testimony through the Mashiach saying that God is going to return you and have mercy on you, return us to our borders, right, and return us to our kingship. V'shav v'kibescha mikol ha'amin, right, and he's going to return you and gather you from all over the world, from all the nations. אם יהיה נידחך בכסה השמיים, משם יקבצך אדוני אלוהיך ומשם ייקחך, right? If you shall be sent out to all the corners of the world, from there God will return you and bring you back to the land of Israel. And he's going to bring you back. And these are all explicit in the Torah itself. And these are the explicit statements of the Torah. Right? These explicit statements of the Torah are included in all the statements of the Nevi'im. All the times the Nevi'im are talking about the return of the Jewish people, the reinstituting of the Jewish monarchy, of a king, of rebuilding the temple and repracticing the sacrifice. Right? This is all based in the explicit statements of the Torah already. Even in Parashat Balak, right, when we read about Bilam, it says, V'sham nibba b'shnei Meshiachim. Over there, he prophesied about two messiahs, two Mashiachs. Mashiach harishon shehu David, the first one, which is David, shehoshia et Yisrael miyad sarehem, u'b'Mashiach hacharon sheya'amod mibanav. Right, the first Mashiach, which was David, right, who rescued the Jewish people from their enemies, right? Then they were fighting the Philistine. And the later Mashiach that will rise from his descendants, right? The one that will redeem the Jewish people from the sons of Esav. And this is what it says in Parashat Balak, Are'enu velo ata ze David, Ashurenu velo karov ze HaMelech HaMashiach. Right, so he says, I see him, but not now. That's referring to David. It's going to come a little bit later in the future, a few hundred years later. Ashurenu velo karov, right? He is going to bring joy to us, but not yet. It's still far out. That's talking about the later Mashiach. Ashurenu velo karov, ze HaMelech HaMashiach. Darach Kokhba miYaakov, ze David. V'kam shevet miYisrael, ze HaMelech HaMashiach. Right? These are all verses brought in the prophecies of Balak, where the Chachamim, they split them. They said the first part of the verse is talking about David. The second part is a prophecy for the later Mashiach. Mahas pa'ate Moab ze David. V'chen hu omer, v'yach et Moab, v'yimdaden b'hevel. It says, Umahas pa'ate Moab, he is going to trample Moab. Says that's David. How do we know? Because it says, when David went to war, it says, v'yach et Moab, and he smote Moab. V'karkar kol beneshet, that's the rest of that pasuk. Well, mahas pate Moab, v'karkar beneshet, right? And he's also going to fight the sons of Seth. Ze HaMelech HaMashiach, right? This is the later Mashiach. Shene'emar bo, which it says, u'moshlo miyam ad yam. Says, and his reign will be from sea to sea, from coast to coast. Meaning he's going to, his influence will be over the entire world. V'haya Edom Yerasha de David, right? And he's going to conquer Edom. That's David. Shene'emar v'ti Edom le David na'avadim. Says, and the Edomians were slaves to David. This is in Shemuel. So it says, when v'haya Edom Yerasha, where he's going to conquer, what's the word? To inherit Edom, right? That's referring to the first Mashiach, David. V'haya Yerasha Seir Oyevav Ze HaMelech HaMashiach. Right? It says, and he's, when it says, and he is going to inherit Seir, right? So Seir, that's referring to Melech HaMashiach. Shne'emar ve'alu Moshi'im behar Sion nishpot et har Esav. Says we're going to have our our redeemers, so it's not just like the Moshiach, the Melech Moshiach, but it's his whole army is going to come, right, and re-enter Har Zion, the mountain of Jerusalem, the mountain of the Mikdash, the Temple Mount, Nishpot et Har Esav, and they are going to pass judgment on Esav. Right now, the International Court of Law is in Hague. What's going to happen when the Moshiach comes? It's going to be on the Temple Mount, and they are going to judge Hague. They are going to judge the rest of the world. Even with regards to the sanctuary cities, it says, ויספת לך עוד 3 ערים על 3 האלה. Right, so we have a law, it's called the sanctuary cities. Anyone familiar with that law? Anyone know what the sanctuary cities are? So sanctuary cities are Levite cities, where, or specific Levite cities, where if somebody caused the death of somebody else, right, not on purpose, not deliberately, but by accident, then he needs to run away to one of these sanctuary cities where he'll be protected over there.
City of refuge?
It's right, like a refuge. He's like a refugee in one of these cities.
City of refuge, yes.
Right, so what's the logic behind it is, well, he caused the death of someone through negligence, through I don't know, maybe he drank too much before he got in his car and he got into a car accident and caused someone to die. So this person doesn't have proper respect for life. So we're going to send him to one of these Levite cities where he won't be able to leave the cities, and he's going to be surrounded by the Levi'im, who are always teaching Torah, and they're going to teach him more, how to properly appreciate and value life. That's going to correct his bad midah of negligence. All right. So regarding the sanctuary cities, it says, "Ki yarchiv Adonai Elohecha et givulecha," right? When God will expand your borders, ויספת לך עוד 3 ערים, and you shall add on another 3 cities other than these current 3 cities. There are a total of 6 sanctuary cities, right? 3 in the mainland Israel, and 3 are designated cities once we expand our borders. It says, and this hasn't happened yet. We haven't yet expanded the borders to those areas with those other 3 cities. And God did not command us to add these extra 3 cities for nothing. Meaning, he says, when you expand your borders to there, add these extra cities as sanctuary cities, right? And if it hasn't happened yet, meaning it's bound to happen eventually. So if it hasn't happened yet, when will it happen? It'll happen in the future. Once we restore our kingdom and expand our borders, we'll have those cities. אבל בדברי הנביאים אין הדבר צריך ראיה, שכל הספרים מלאים דבר זה. Right? However, I'm not going to bother even bringing you proof from the books of the prophets. It says because the books of the prophets are full, completely full with prophecies regarding the Moshiach. Right? Everything we've been explaining now, we've been explaining Pesukim in the Torah, verses in the Torah, which some of them are explicit, some of them need commentary and explanation, and some of it is a prophecy that hasn't come to fruition yet. However, with the Nevi'im, they're always talking about Moshiach. It's the books of Nevi'im are full of prophecies on the Moshiach. There's no need to bring any proof of it. All right, so al ya'ale al da'atcha שהמלך המשיח צריך לעשות אותות ומופתים. Right? So, I think in general, there is a bit confusion, a bit like wrong expectations of the Messianic era and who the Messiah, who the Mashiach is. He says, the Rambam says very clearly, he says, don't expect that when the Mashiach comes, that he needs to make any sort of like supernatural miracle. ומחדש דברים בעולם, and he maybe makes new laws, new rules, or new rules of science. Like the world isn't going to behave the way we expect it to, as we know it. Like the world as we know it's going to come to an end, and there's going to be a whole new world with a whole other set of even physical rules. This is, don't think that. The Moshiach isn't coming to change the world. He's not coming to perform miracles. And don't expect the Moshiach to come and resurrect the dead. We do believe in resurrection of the dead, but that's not necessarily something that the Moshiach needs to do. Or someone dies and he goes, puts his hand on him and he rises from the dead. Or like any of these things that the fools believe, foolish people believe. Right? This isn't what makes the Moshiach a Moshiach.
Will that mean, sorry, can I ask a question? Will that mean when the people that are resurrected from the dead won't have a body like now, have a body that can go through walls?
A body, not that once they're resurrected from the dead, they may have different bodies than like we have now.
Yeah.
But that could be because they'll have like genetically engineered bodies or something. They'll have stronger bodies, bigger bodies, healthier bodies, or something like that.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, because 6 foot under and in a box, I'm just trying to think of the logic, because you said that the Messiah is not necessarily his job.
Right. It's possible that the resurrection of the dead will take place before the Moshiach comes. It's possible it will take place sometime after he comes.
Yeah.
But it's not like he's going to have this power to resurrect people from the dead.
Okay. All right. I understand now. Thanks.
The Mashiach is a person. And he's limited by the same things that any other person is limited. Maybe a wiser person, a more righteous person, maybe more charismatic, because he needs to get to the position of being the king over the people, possibly even elected, maybe even democratically elected. I don't know. It's possible. But he's not some sort of divine being coming and performing miracles and doing supernatural things.
Like the Christian way of thinking, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay.
This is not like the Christian way of thinking.
Okay.
So, Shaharei Rabbi Akiva, how do we know, right, that he's not some sort of divine being, right, angelic being? He doesn't need to perform any kind of miracles, supernatural miracles. It says, Shaharei Rabbi Akiva, Hacham Gadol Mechachmehem Mishnah. We see Rabbi Akiva, right? Remember, Rabbi Akiva, the entire Torah, oral Torah that we have today was basically from Rabbi Akiva and the students. Says he was one of the greatest Hachamim in the times of the Mishnah. Vehu haya nosek hilav shel ben Kokhba hamelech. Right? And he was the person who would, you'd have like the main fighter going out to battle, and you have someone carrying his weapons, right? So I don't know, because maybe in a certain battle he needs to use a certain sword, and in another battle the warrior needs to use a smaller sword or an axe, and he's not carrying everything on him while he's fighting. So he has someone, it's called a nosekinim, somebody who carries his stuff with him, and he's kind of like partnered with this warring. So it says that Rabbi Akiva was the Nosekenim. He was the person who carried, right, the weapons for the king named Ben Kokhba. Ben Kokhba, I don't know, maybe you've heard of him as Bar Kokhba. Have you heard of Bar Kokhba, the great revolt of Bar Kokhba? He tried to beat the Roman Empire, who was controlling. This is like maybe 50 years after the destruction of the temple, of the second temple. Right? There was the big rebellion of Bar Kokhba, which for a while was actually successful. They weren't that far off from overthrowing the Roman Empire in the land of Israel. And everyone thought that this king, Bar Kokhba, was the Moshiach, meaning after the destruction of the first temple, it was 70 years until we came back and we built the second temple. So now we're talking about 50 years after the destruction of the second temple, and you have this charismatic king that is very successful in his military campaigns, and he's rebelling against the Roman Empire, and he's succeeding. And everyone thought that that's it. The Moshiach, the second Moshiach is coming now. Soon we're going to build the third temple. As soon as he finishes fighting the Romans. And Bar Kokhba, Rabbi Akiva, was one of his top supporters. And not just Rabbi Akiva. Most of Chachmei HaMishnah, most of the Tanaim of the time, thought that this Bar Kokhba was the intended Messiah. Right? And Rabbi Akiva would say regarding Bar Kokhba, Shehu HaMelech HaMashiach, that he is the Messianic king. V'dimahu v'kol Chachmei Doro, Shehu HaMelech HaMashiach. And him and all of the Chachamim in his generation, they all thought that Bar Kokhba or Ben Kokhba is the Messiah. Ad sheneherag ba'avonot. Right? Until he was eventually killed. So he would doubt, he did these campaigns, he had a lot of successful campaigns. Everyone thought, right, that this is the time of our redemption. We are finishing this second galut that we have. And then Bar Kokhba gets killed. He gets killed at war. And if he's dead, he's no longer the Moshiach. Kevan sheneherag, right, once that he was killed, noda she'eno Mashiach. Right, then we know that he is not, for sure he was not the Mashiach. Right, because the Mashiach is going to succeed, and he's not going to be killed while trying to restore our sovereignty. ולא שאלו ממנו חכמים לא אות ולא מופת. And none of the Chachamim who supported him ever asked him to perform some sort of miracle, to do some sort of supernatural thing. He was doing his job as the Moshiach, or as a king, and they supported him, and then he died, and he failed, and then they knew that he's not the Moshiach. All right? So I think normally people think of two types of Moshiach. We'll call it the one true Moshiach that will come and succeed, and a false Moshiach, Moshiach Sheker. Right? But this is a different category of Moshiach. Says this is a failed Moshiach. It's not a false Moshiach. He's a failed Moshiach. And I'll explain the difference. We'll see soon. It says ve'ikara devarim kachahim, and this is the gist of what the Moshiach is about. שהתורה הזאת אין חוקיה ומשפטיה משתנים לעולם. Right? This Torah that we receive from God, the laws of the Torah never change, and they're never canceled. right? They're valid forever. Forever and ever. Then مُوصِفِين عَلَيْهِمْ. And we don't add to the mitzvot of the Torah. وَلَا גורעים مِهِمْ. And we don't subtract any of the mitzvot from the Torah. וכל המוסיף או גורע או שגילה פנים בתורה והוסיף דברים של מצוות מפשוטן, הרי זה בוודאי רשע ואפיקורוס. But in anybody who adds onto the Torah or subtracts or changes the meaning of the laws in the Torah, right? He is a rasha, right? He is wicked, he is evil, and he's an apikoros, right? And he, rejects the Torah. All right, why is he saying this? Anyone have an idea? Like, why all of a sudden he's talking about a failed Moshiach, not a false Messiah, a failed Moshiach, and then he wants to emphasize this point that the Torah never changes. Why? Any ideas? Well, we have many mitzvot, 613 mitzvot. One of those mitzvot, for instance, is to build a mikdash, to build a temple. Who needs to fulfill that mitzvah? So a lot of people that you speak to today, they'll say, when Moshiach comes, he will build a temple. Until then, we have no business with the Temple Mount. We have no business building a temple, no business bringing sacrifices on Temple Mount. Says, but that's not the mitzvah. We have a mitzvah to build a temple. We have a mitzvah to bring korbanot. And these mitzvot never change. Meaning these mitzvot apply today as well. We today have a mitzvah to build a temple. And to bring korban Pesach, to bring korban Tamid, to bring all the korbanot that we're meant to bring in the Mikdash. So he says, ואם יעמוד מלך מבית דוד, הוגה בתורה ועוסק במצוות כדוד אביו, right? And if there shall come a king, and he's from the descendants of King David, and he fulfills the mitzvot, he follows the mitzvot, and he studies Torah, hogeh b'Torah, he studies Torah, he understands Torah, and he does the mitzvot, כפי תורה שבכתב ושבעל פה, right? Follows the instructions of the Torah according to the written and the oral law. ויחוב כל ישראל ינכבה ולחזק בדקה, right? And he will make the law of the Torah the law of the land, meaning now everybody needs to follow the laws of the Torah. ויילחם מלחמות השם, and he will fight the wars against our enemies. הרי זה בחזקת שהוא משיח. All right, so then we say that this king is a chazakah. Chazakah means he's likely to be the Moshiach. We don't need any proof. We don't need to go to someone who, let's say, claims to be Moshiach and say, well, show me where God appointed you Moshiach. God doesn't appoint the Moshiach. The Moshiach is a king doing his job. What's the job of the king? The job of the king is to ensure our security, to fight off our enemies, to build the capital city. And if he did all these things and he succeeded, and he beat all our enemies around us, and he built the temple in its place, and he gathered the Jewish people from all over the world, says, then this is surely the Moshiach. When is the Moshiach appointed to be the Moshiach? Say he's not. Once he succeeds, then we say, this must have been the Moshiach that God was talking about. Ve'im lo itzliach, However, if he didn't succeed, or neherag, or he was killed, like Bar Kokhba was killed, בידוע שאינו זה שהבטיחה עליו Torah, then we can know that this isn't the Moshiach that the Torah had promised us, right? Because if the prophecy didn't, right, come to fruition, wasn't fulfilled, then we know it'll be fulfilled later on. והרי הוא ככל מלכי בית דוד השלמים הכשרים שמתו. Right, so what is the status? He's not a false Mashiach. He is like any of the righteous kings from the descendants of David who passed away, who died. ולא העמידו הקדוש ברוך הוא אלא לנסות בו רבים, right? And the reason why he brought forth is to try the people. What do you mean try the people? Get the people ready. Maybe the people weren't ready, right? We had wars. We beat off our enemies. We conquered Jerusalem. We liberated Temple Mount, right? We already reached all of this. Now, what do we need? It's like, well, the people weren't ready. We gave back Temple Mount. It says, well, when the people are ready and will elect a proper leader who will take back Temple Mount and build the temple, it says, then we know that this was the Moshiach. שנאמר ומן המשכילים ייכשלו, לצרוף בהן וללבן עד עת קץ, כי עוד חזון למועד. So the Mashiach isn't someone, like we started off saying that we have to wait for the Mashiach. But that was more, you have to wait for the Mashiach when you have no other choice. So there's nothing else you can do, right? When past 2,000 years, we had no central government. We were scattered throughout the world. All we can do is pray and hope that one day the Moshiach comes. However, today, it's different. Today, we have a central government. Today, the majority of the Jewish people are back in the land of Israel, and we have a sovereign state with a powerful military. It's our job to elect a leader that is going to do these things and not wait for the temple to fall down from the heavens. It's our job to make sure that we are doing the mitzvot and to elect leaders that follow the mitzvot. Af Yeshua HaNosri. Now it's talking about Jesus. It says even Jesus from Nazareth, Shedima Sheyeh Mashiach, who thought that he was going to be the Mashiach, V'neherag bebedin, and he was, it says he was killed by the Bedin, by the Supreme Court. Meaning the Supreme Court already passed the verdict that he needs to be killed, and then he was passed on to the Romans to crucify. Kvar nitnabba bo Daniel. Daniel, right, in the book of Daniel, Daniel was a prophet. He already prophesied about Jesus. He says, שנאמר, ובני פריסי עמך ינסאו להאמין חזון ונכשל. He says, and some of the פריסי עמך, how would I translate that? Some of the lowly people from your nation are going to elevate themselves and claim to be prophets, and they are going to fail. It says, Af Yeshua HaNotzri is talking about the prophecies regarding Mashiach. So even the prophecy regarding a false Mashiach, because Yeshua, Jesus isn't a failed Mashiach, he is a false Mashiach, right? He says, and they're going to fail. He's going to fail in trying to establish something. Says, and is there a bigger obstacle, any greater obstacle than Jesus himself? Says all the prophets, they talk about when Mashiach comes, he's going to redeem the Jewish people and save them from their enemies. And he's going to gather them right into the Holy Land, and he's going to encourage the people to keep the mitzvot. Right, and he, Jesus, garam leibud Israel becherev. He caused the Jewish people to be massacred by sword. And to disperse them throughout, even more throughout the world, and to humiliate them even more. Torah, and he replaced the Torah with his own laws. And he caused a very big portion of the world to worship a God that's not God. That's not our God, the one God. To worship a Trinity. To worship a pagan God. It says, Aval mahshavot bore olam en koach ba'adam lahasigan. Right? God doesn't think the way man thinks. And God did something here. Our ways are not God's ways, and our thoughts aren't God's thoughts. And all these things that came about because of Jesus of Nazareth, or the Christians, and also of this Ismailite, right, Muhammad, who came after Christianity came Islam. Right? All this came to pave the way for the Moshiach. Right? And to cause the entire world, or to prepare the world, to worship God together. Right now, there's Christianity. They're considered to be monotheists, right? They spread this idea of there being one God. Their idea of a one God is corrupt, but they still spread an idea throughout the entire world of worshiping one God. And so did Islam. And they also got things wrong. They also corrupted the idea of this one God. Not as badly as the Christians, but still. All right? So when the Mashiach comes, you already have billions of people in the world who are familiar with this concept of one God. Now it's his job just to show them what's the proper way to worship this God. שנאמר, כי אז ההפוך אל עמים שפה ברורה לקרוא כולם בשם השם ולעובדו שכם אחד. Right? Because then, right, at the end of days, when the Moshiach comes, right, I will appeal to the nations, right, in a clear statement, in a clear language, clear ideas, to call everyone, לקרוא כולם בשם השם, in the name of God, and to worship him, ולעובדו שכם אחד. Right, for the entire world to worship this one God together. כיצד? How? כבר נתמלא העולם כולו מדברי המשיח. The entire world is already filled with this idea of a Mashiach, of a Messiah coming to redeem not just the Jewish people, but to redeem humanity. ומדברי התורה ומדברי המצוות, and everybody knows of the Jewish people, and everybody knows of the Torah. ופשטו דברים אלו באיים רחוקים, right? And this reached even the small far islands. ובעמים רבים ערני לב, right? It reached all the corners of the world. והם נושאים ונותנים מדברים אלו. Right? And these people, they discuss these ideas. They discuss the ideas of monotheism. Right? There are many different sects of Islam that have different philosophies where they discuss ideas of what does the unity of God mean. And also in Christianity, many different philosophical sects that discuss the scripture, that give commentary to the scripture. ובמצוות התורה and the mitzvot themselves. אלו אומרים מצוות אלו אמת היו, וכבר בטלו בזמן הזה, ולא היו נוהגות לדורות. However, some of them say, like the Christians, that these mitzvot, these commandments that we receive, or that are written in the Torah, they are true commandments. However, they are annulled. They don't apply anymore. ואלו אומרים דברים נסתרות יש בהם, and some of them say that these mitzvot have a deep idea to them, but they're not אינן כפשוטן, they're not literal, right? It says don't eat pork, but it's the idea of not eating pork. It's not that you're not actually allowed to eat pork. וכבר בא משיח וגילה נסתרם, right? But how do you call it? The Messiah came, Jesus came, and he already revealed all these secrets. And so we no longer need to actually follow the law literally, only the idea, the spirit of the law. However, when the true, real Moshiach comes and stands, right, and he's going to succeed, and he's going to be elevated, and everyone's going to follow him. מיד הם כולם חוזרים ויודעים ששקר נחלו אבותיהם. Right away, all these people will see that these ideas that the Torah is a no, that the Torah doesn't, it's only the spirit of the law. You don't actually have to keep the law itself, the letter of the law, right? They'll see that all these ideas were false. They were wrong. ושנביאיהם ואבותיהם הטעו, and that they were led astray by their prophets, right, Muhammad, and by their ancestors. Once, right, for instance, once the actual Mashiach comes, and in a way, a lot of it has already happened. A lot of these prophecies of us coming back to the land of Israel, it's already something you can stick in people's face, right? You can say, look, well, these prophecies were right. We came back, right? So this idea that the Jewish people were replaced is wrong. I mean, until 1948, maybe you could have thought that the Christian idea that the Jewish people broke the covenant and God rejected them as a people and now replace them with another people, anybody who believes in Jesus, maybe up until 1948, people can be convinced of that. But once we all came back, and once we have reestablished ourselves as a sovereign nation in the land of Israel, fulfilling many of these prophecies, I see that idea was wrong. It was false. There's not much you need to prove. It's in front of your face. It's just open up how do you call it? Open up the newspaper. You don't even need to look at the biblical text. Just read the newspaper. It's all unfolding right in front of us. And this is the last chapter. אל יעלה על הלב שבימות המשיח יתבטל דבר ממנהגו של עולם. I don't think that when the Moshiach comes, the world is going to change. או יש שם חידוש במעשה בראשית, or the laws of nature will change. אלא העולם כמנהגו נוהג. Right? The world is going to continue behaving as it behaves, as the laws instituted by God and the 6 days of creation. וזה שנאמר בישעיה, וגר זאב עם כבש ונמר עם גדי ירבץ. Right? And these prophecies that you have in Yeshaya where it says, and the wolf is going to live with the sheep, right? What does that mean? Well, that's kind of against the nature of the wolf and the sheep, right? Oops. It's kind of against the nature of the wolf and the sheep. So, according to that prophecy, it seems that there really is going to be a change in the world, the laws of nature. It says, no, it's mashal v'hidah, right? This is just an allegory. What does it mean? It says, ועניין הדבר שיהיו ישראל יושבים לבטח עם רשעי העולם. Says, the kevis is the Jewish people. And the zev is referring to our enemies. What it's saying is that our enemies now, at the end of days, we're going to be living peacefully with them. שנאמר זאב ערבות ישודדם נמר שוקד על עריהם, right? And it brings another pasuk showing that that the allegory of a ze'ev, of a wolf, and that of a tiger is our enemies coming to conquer us. ויחזרו כולם לדת האמת, right? At the end of the days when the Moshiach comes, everyone's going to come back to the right understanding of God. ולא יגזרו ולא ישחיתו, right? Nobody's going to be stealing, no one's going to be destroying, conquering. אלא יאכלו דבר המותר בנחת כישראל, שנאמר ואריה כבקר יאכלתם. Right? People are going to start following, says people may even start following laws of kashrut because they'll see the benefit in it. And so that's what it means. Ve'aryeh, the lion, kabakar yochalteven, right? As the, how do you call it? As beef or as the cows eat hay, so too will the lions eat hay. It's not saying that there's going to be this zootopia at the end of days where everyone is going, even the animals are going to be a vegetarian. No, it's saying that the other nations are going to adopt the same dietetic habits of the Jewish people. It's like today we have, every first world country has the Ministry of Health, and in order to put out any food in the market, it needs to be stamped by the Ministry of Health. Right? That idea comes from, it needs to be stamped that it's kosher. And so people are going to start to mimic, or they already have started. Some people, even today, I'm not eating pork. I don't eat pork because there must be something wrong with pork. The Jews don't eat pork. The Muslims don't eat pork either. Maybe there's something inherently bad with eating pork. And so people are going to accept it upon themselves that they want to imitate Jewish behavior. They'll even adopt our kashrut ideas. וכן כל כיוסף באלו הדברים הכתובים בעניין המשיח משנים הם. And all these things that are written, right, regarding the days of the Mashiach, for instance, that clothes will grow on trees. These are all mishalim. They're not actually, clothes aren't actually going to be growing on trees. ובيמות המלך המשיח, and in the times of the Mashiach, יוודע לכל לאיזה דבר היו משל ומה עניין רמוז בהם. Right, and in the days of the Moshiach, the Messianic era, will already understand what these mishalim right? What these allegories were alluding to. These are things that the prophets back then couldn't even imagine. So what does that mean, that clothes are going to be growing on trees? Well, back then it was a very big deal to make clothes. Today, you just go to the mall, and when you pick things off the hanger, right, at the store, it's even easier than picking fruit off a tree. So what did the Nevi'im mean when they say you're going to be picking, or the Chachamim mean when they said you're going to be picking your clothes off trees? It's just going to be so easily and readily accessible to everybody, like picking fruit off tree. Today, we can understand what they were talking about, but they didn't even understand what they were talking about. They just knew it was going to be very, very easily accessible. אמרו חכמים, אין בין העולם הזה לימות המשיח, אלא שעבוד מלכויות בלבד. And this is maybe the most important statement of the Chachamim to remember regarding the Messianic era. They say there is no difference between this world that we're living in now, the pre-Messianic era, and the post-Messianic era world. There is absolutely no difference except for one thing, shi'abud malchuyot bilvad. That our kingdom will not be subject to another one. Meaning we are going to be our own independent sovereign nation. That is the whole difference between the Messianic era or post-Messianic era and the pre-Messianic era, the past 2,000 years from the destruction of the Second Temple. It says, Yira'eh, it seems, mipeshutan shel divrei hanevi'im, from reading the prophecies of the Nevi'im, it seems that shebitchilat yamot HaMashiach tiyeh milchemet Gog uMagog, that at the beginning of the Messianic era, there is going to be this huge war, this world war called Gog uMagog. V'shekodem milchemet Gog uMagog, and that before this war breaks out, Ya'amod Navi Israel, that there will be a prophet to come, a prophet will come to the Jewish people, Leyasher Israel ulachin libam, right, to ready the people and to teach them. It seems, right, that this is how it's going to play out. Shene'emar, it says, Hinei anochi sholach lachem et Eliyah hanavi. It says, behold, I am going to send. Says Lifnei bo yom, right? Before the day that Gog comes to Israel, I'm going to send Eliyahu Hanavi. Ve'eno ba letameh tahor, and he doesn't come to purify the impure people, right? So people say, well, we can't bring korbanot today because we're all impure. Only when Moshiach comes, we'll be able to do that. It says when he comes, it's not to purify people who are impure. That's not his objective. Not to purify the impure and not to tell the pure that they are impure. Right? And he's not coming to tell people, well, no, you are a mamzer. Maybe you don't know it, but 7 generations ago, your father had bad, wrong relations. And from then on, everyone in your family tree is a bastard. No, he doesn't come to do that. Anybody who is b'hiskat kasher, who is considered to be kasher, he doesn't come to change their heritage. Velo le'achshin mishu chuzaku pesulin, and not the opposite. It could be someone who thinks he is a mamzer, and a Navi could tell him that no, you're fine. But that's not what the Navi is coming for. Ela lasum shalom ba'olam. He's coming for one purpose, that is to bring peace to the world. Shene'emar ve'yeshiv lev avot al banim. V'yesh mina hachamim, and there are those of the hachamim that say, shekodim biat HaMelech HaMashiach, before the Moshiach comes, yavo Eliyahu. Not just a prophet, but Eliyahu himself will come. V'chol elu hadevarim v'chayoseh bahem. And all of these things, right? We said yira'eh mipeshutan shedvar. It seems, according to the peshat of the prophecies, and some of the hachamim say that before Eliyahu Navi comes, but all of these things, it's all speculation. Lo yida adam he'ach yiyu ad shehiyu. Nobody knows how it's going to unfold until it unfolds. The only way to give a proper description of how the Messianic era plays out is to write a book on history after it already played out. There is no prediction. There's no concrete prediction of the chain of events that will happen. There are many independent predictions, but we don't know how they fit in with each other. Shedevarim setumim hen etzel haneviim. Says these are sealed prophecies. Sealed prophecy meaning they're not explicit prophecies. They're vague prophecies. Gam hachamim, and the hachamim themselves, ein kabbalah b'devarim enu. They have no tradition on these topics. Ela lefi hechrei hapesukim. However, each Chacham tries to understand the Pesukim and try to deduce from the Pesukim how it's going to play out. But nobody really knows. And therefore, there are many disputes between the Chachamim. One says, no, first Eliyahu is going to come, and then they're going to resurrect the dead. And one says, no, they're going to resurrect the dead first. It says, no, before they resurrect the dead, there's going to be this huge world war that all the nations are going to participate in. It says, ve'al kol panim, however, in any event, en sidur havayat devarim elu, ve'lo dikdukan ikar badat. The order in which these things play out and how it's going to happen and all the nuances, none of this is fundamental to Judaism. What's fundamental to Judaism is trusting the promise that God made that these things will happen. What's not fundamental to Judaism is how it's going to happen and how it's going to play out. Because what's important to us in any event is to follow the mitzvot of the Torah. All the mitzvot of the Torah, including the mitzvot to conquer our enemies and to settle the land and to return to the land of Israel. Really, we don't even need a Moshiach. We just need to do what we were commanded to do. That is the Moshiach. The one who is at the head of the nation at that time, where we actually implement all of these things, retroactively will say he was the Moshiach. Right? And a person should never be overly focused on all these tales, all these midrashim, all these Haggadot regarding the days of the Moshiach, the Messianic era. And you shouldn't spend too much time on these midrashim. Right? And he shouldn't make this, right, a main focus of his study. Right? Focusing on his midrashim, they don't bring a person closer to God. They don't intensify his love for God. or his awe and fear of God. What does? Studying Torah, fulfilling the mitzvot. וכן לא יחשב הכיסים, and he shouldn't try to calculate the end of days. Right? There's many different prophecies that may seem to give you some sort of calculation. Just don't even bother. Don't bother trying to calculate the end of days because it's irrelevant. What's relevant? Following the mitzvot. Amru Hachamim. The Hachamim said, "Tefuach hada'atan shel mechashvei kisim," says the minds of those who are calculating the end of days should be corrupted. Right? But the person should wait, right? Or he should believe and trust the general idea that the Jewish people will eventually be redeemed, that there will be a true Messiah, Moshiach, that will come, and eventually the temple will be rebuilt, and the korbanot will be offered again, and the Shemitah and the Yovel will be reinstituted. The Supreme Court of Israel will be reinstituted. בימי המלך המשיח שתיישב מלכותו והתקבצו אליו כל ישראל יתייחסו כולם על פיו ברוח הקודש שתנוח עליו. This is already all right. I'll skip a bit, so we're almost finished. לא נתאוו הנביאים וחכמים ימות המשיח. Says the prophets and the Chachamim, they did not desire the days of the Moshiach, לא כדי שישלטו על כל העולם, not for the sake of being in control of the world, right, and having everybody serve us. That's not why they all wanted the Messianic era to come. ולא כדי שירדו בגויים, and not, right, and not to subjugate the rest of the nations to the Jewish people. ולא כדי שינשאו אותם העמים, and also that the rest of the nations elevate us above them. ולא כדי לאכול ולשתות ולשמוח, right, and not for the sake of having a tremendous amount of food and wine and to be happy. This isn't the reason why the Hachamim and the Nevi'im aspired for the Messianic era. אלא כדי שיהיו פנויים בתורה ובחוכמתה. This is because in the Messianic era there will be peace. Finally, the Hachamim could sit down and study and discuss ideas with each other. ולא יהיה להם נוגס ומבטל, and there will be nobody to chase after them, nobody to oppress them, nobody for them to flee from and to cancel their classes on Torah because they have to run for their lives now. This is what the Hachamim wanted. The peace that comes with Yemot HaMoshiach for the sake of fulfilling the Torah and studying the Torah without any obstacles. כדי שיזכו לחיי העולם הבא. So that they can merit and inherit the world to come. The eternal life, the return to the Garden of Eden. כמו שביארנו בהלכות תשובה, as we already stated in הלכות תשובה, ובאותו הזמן, and in that time, לא יהיה שם לא רעב ולא מלחמה. Right, in this time, this post-Messianic era, there will be no hunger, no famine, there will be no war, ולא קנאה ותחרות, and no jealousy between the nations. שהטובה תהיה מושפעת הרבה. Right, because the goodness of God, right, the shefa coming forth from God will be in abundance and available to everybody. וכל המעדנים מצויים כעפר. Right, and all the delicacies will be available as available as dirt is. right? Today, you want a delicacy, you go to the delicatessen down the road. We're half living in this Messianic era. ולא יהיה עסק כל העולם אלא לדעת את אדוני בלבד. Right? And the entire enterprise of the world, the entire ambition of humanity will be to increase their knowledge of God. And we still see that, parts of that today, with universities and intellectual, academies and philosophy, that we see the world going there. However, once we bring an end to war and famine, right? Once we demonstrate to the world how a proper society behaves under God and how to serve God at the temple, right? Then the entire world will be a lot more engaged and invested in this enterprise of bringing God into their lives. And therefore, at that time, we'll have tremendous wisdom. And a lot of things that were sealed from people in the past will now be revealed. And we see that a lot in the world of science and the world of medicine. And the people will understand God as much as humanly possible. As it says, right? Because the entire earth will be filled with the knowledge of God. As water covers the ocean, right? So too will the word of God, the knowledge of God, cover the earth. Any questions?
So the Moshiach is supposed to be like King David, a political figure, not a spiritual being or anything?
Exactly. It'll be spiritual the way that any of the Hachamim were spiritual beings.
Mhm. And
It'll
was
be
that
a
first?
malach to the extent that it'll be somebody who emulates these abstract ideas of justice, right, and charity, is considered to be a malach. But he is not going to be some metaphysical being that comes and performs miracles, and all of a sudden, the next day, the world is as God intended.
Okay.
He's going to be a leader that'll bring us there.
And who was the first Moshiach?
So David.
It was King. Oh, okay. Okay.
The truth is, there were other Mashiachs on the way. David referred to King Saul as Mashiach Hashem. The word Mashiach literally means anointed. So we have an anointed Kohen. A Kohen is called Mashuach Milchama. Before we go out to war, a Kohen needs to come and speak, kind of motivate the soldiers and strengthen their spirit. So the Kohen that's appointed to do that is also called Kohen Mashiach or Mashuach. Any king that's anointed is called a Mashiach.
Oh, okay.
But the Moshiach, the Moshiach is the one who is going to finally bring us to this final state of independence, sovereignty on our land, restoring the Torah to its right place.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
This Jesus, was he just an event? Was he real, or who was he really?
It was false.
False, but
He was a
false,
real
but
person.
Oh, okay.
okay.
He was an actual person, but we would regard him as a false Messiah. So what's the difference between a true, false, and failed? True Mashiach, actually there wasn't only one, right? We said David was a true Mashiach. He prepared the grounds for the temple. He didn't actually build it. His son built it, right? But this is, he did, or he accomplished what the Mashiach is meant to accomplish. A failed Mashiach is someone who tried to accomplish what the Mashiach is meant to accomplish, but he didn't succeed. He, for whatever reason, they elected someone else instead of him. He died. He was killed at war. He got old, for whatever reason. That's a failed Mashiach, and that's not a bad thing. He's considered to be one of the great righteous kings of Israel. And a false Mashiach, a false Messiah, is someone who led the people off in the wrong direction, such as Jesus, such as one of the most famous ones is called Shabtai Tzvi, around, it was like a few hundred years ago in Turkey. And false Mashiachs, there have been many, many, many of them. They're often charismatic people that claim to have a special knowledge, mystic knowledge that nobody else has, and only through them you can receive some sort of redemption, or only through them you can get to know God or be saved from hell. Those are like commonalities between most false messiahs. They're like guru type people.
Excuse me.
Yes.
What about Yosef ben David?
Messiah ben David. Messiah ben Yosef.
Messiah ben Yosef. What about him?
That's a good question. Mashiach ben Yosef, well, I don't think there's actually any reference in the Tanakh to a Mashiach ben Yosef. There is to Bet Yosef, the house of Yosef. Yosef and David in general, or Yosef and Yehuda in general, are two different, even competing philosophies. We can go into like a whole class on that topic, right? We're not going to get into that here because it's an entire topic to discuss. But Yosef in general is the Jewish leadership in Galut, right? Yosef was king in Egypt, not in Eretz Yisrael. The Yehuda/David philosophy is a lot more nationalistic. Yosef is more economic focused, right? Prosperity. He was rich, right? Prosperity, and also call it more mystic, like Sadiq. We'll call that's like the more divine, superhuman, right? Yosef, he was able to withstand like superhuman trials that Yehuda wasn't, right? Now the story of, at the same time that Yosef was sold to Egypt, it says, Yosef hurad Misraima, Yosef was taken down to Egypt. At that exact same time, it says, V'yered Yehuda me'etechad, Yehuda descended from his brothers. And that's when he went to seek out a prostitute, the exact opposite of Yosef, right? Yosef was tried with the wife of Potiphar, and he withstood that. So they're two very different, competing philosophies. In the end, the Mashiach, the actual Mashiach, is from the house of Yehuda, from the descendants of David. He's a human, and he could make mistakes, like David. David also made mistakes, right? The difference is that when Yehuda and David make mistakes, they repent, they do teshuvah. Yosef can't do teshuvah because he's inhuman. He doesn't make mistakes. He's above mistakes.
Thank you.
By the way, the first king, Shaul, was from Binyamin, right? Like Yosef's brother. He made mistakes, but he was above mistakes. He didn't actually do teshuvah. And that's why he was replaced with David. Anything
Thank you.
else? Pleasure. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no one
No,
else.
just very interesting. I find it a very interesting lesson.
Thank you.
Very
Thank you.
interesting.
I'm happy you find it interesting.
Me too. I
sure
find it also very interesting.
Okay, that's two.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Can I
class was
ask
wonderful.
again?
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah.
Can I ask again about Shabtai Tzvi? Was he false or he failed?
He was false.
And why?
Do you know a bit about Shabtai Tzvi?
A little that he converted to
Right, he eventually
Muslim.
converted to Islam, right? He came and he he tried to change laws or to make himself above laws. For instance,
Yeah.
one of the Birkot HaShachar, one of the blessings we say in the morning is
Yes.
Matir Asurim. You familiar with that? Where God
Yeah.
unbinds the bound, or people lets people out of jail. Shabtai Tzvi
Yes.
changed that beracha to Matir Isurim. He who allows that which is forbidden. And every time he wanted to do something that was forbidden according to Torah, he would say, Baruch Matir Isurim.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Toda rabba.
Pleasure. Okay, everybody, it's Laila Tov. Enjoyed teaching again, and we'll meet, I guess, next week.
Okay, Laila Tov, thank you so much, Sami.
Thank you, Laila Tov.